As the $3 million stallion broke free and charged directly toward her, Mia Reynolds froze in terror until the massive beast that had injured multiple trainers gently pressed his forehead against hers, triggering memories she never knew she had. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty trails that snaked through the outskirts of Saguaro Valley. Mia Reynolds adjusted her worn baseball cap, pulling it lower over her eyes as sweat trickled down her temple. At 24, her slender frame moved with practiced ease along the familiar path, her running shoes kicking up small clouds of dust with each determined stride. This daily ritual was her only escape, the single hour of freedom she allowed herself between her two waitressing jobs and caring for her grandmother. "In just one more mile," she whispered to herself, her breath coming in controlled patterns as she pushed forward. The desert landscape stretched around her, beautiful and harsh, much like life itself had been to Mia. Life hadn't dealt Mia the easiest hand. Raised by her grandmother after losing both parents, she'd put college dreams on hold when Margaret Reynolds was diagnosed with Parkinson's 3 years ago. The medical bills had piled up faster than the modest insurance could cover, and their small inheritance had dwindled to almost nothing. As she rounded a bend in the trail, the landscape opened up to reveal the sprawling expanse of Harrington Estates, one of the most prestigious equestrian centers in the Southwest. Mia had always admired the property from a distance. Its manicured grounds, the elegant white fences, and the magnificent horses that represented a world so far removed from her own that it might as well have been on another planet. Today, something was different. The normally peaceful training session in the main arena had an unusual energy. Mia slowed her pace, curiosity getting the better of her as she approached the fence line that separated the public trail from the private property. Inside the arena, a striking black stallion with a single white blaze down his face was giving his handler absolute hell. Even to Mia's untrained eye, the horse was exceptional, powerful muscles rippling beneath a gleaming coat, standing at least 17 hands high. But what caught her attention was the animal's obvious defiance. He pranced sideways, tossed his head, and flat out refused to follow commands. "Thunderbolt, stand down!" A commanding female voice cut through the commotion. Mia spotted the source, a tall, elegant woman in her 50s, immaculately dressed in riding attire, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. Elizabeth Harrington, the owner herself, recognizable from occasional features in the local papers. "That animal is worth more than your annual salary, Carson," Elizabeth called out to the frustrated trainer. "Get him under control or find another position." The young man nodded grimly, his face flushed with exertion and embarrassment as he struggled with the powerful animal. Another trainer was working with a chestnut horse nearby, the two animals clearly meant to be training together. Mia knew she shouldn't linger. This wasn't her world, and she had responsibilities waiting. Her grandmother would need help with dinner soon, and her evening shift at the diner started at 7. Yet something about the magnificent animal's distress held her in place. The stallion's eyes suddenly locked onto her. Mia felt a strange jolt, almost like recognition, though that was impossible. The horse stilled momentarily, nostrils flaring as he seemed to scent the air. What happened next occurred so quickly that Mia would later struggle to piece it together. Thunderbolt reared powerfully, nearly unseating his handler, then bolted forward with unexpected speed. Instead of running around the arena as everyone expected, the stallion gathered himself and launched over the 5-foot fence with impossible grace. The chestnut horse, apparently bonded to Thunderbolt, followed suit with equal athleticism. Shouts of alarm erupted from the training staff. Elizabeth Harrington's face transformed from annoyance to horror as nearly $2 million worth of horseflesh escaped the confines of the arena. "Catch them!" she screamed. "Don't let them reach the road!" But the horses weren't heading toward the road. With powerful strides eating up the distance, both animals were charging directly toward Mia. Frozen in place, Mia's survival instinct finally kicked in as the thundering hooves approached. She stumbled backward, losing her footing on the uneven ground and falling hard onto the dusty trail. She raised her arms instinctively to protect herself, certain she was about to be trampled. Instead, the massive black stallion slowed and circled her, snorting softly. The chestnut kept a slight distance, prancing nervously. Time seemed to stand still as Thunderbolt lowered his magnificent head to Mia's level, his breath warm against her cheek. His earlier rage had vanished completely. With gentle curiosity, he nuzzled her shoulder, then her hair, inhaling deeply as if searching for something in her scent. "Don't move!" one of the handlers shouted, approaching cautiously with a lead rope. "That horse is dangerous!" But Mia didn't feel afraid. Despite the animal's intimidating size, something in his liquid brown eyes felt strangely familiar, almost like an old friend recognizing her after a long absence. Elizabeth Harrington had reached them now, her face a mask of confusion as she witnessed her most valuable and troublesome horse behaving with unexpected gentleness toward a complete stranger. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice tight with tension. "And what have you done to my horse?" I didn't do anything," Mia stammered, still seated in the dust, the massive black stallion standing protectively beside her. The chestnut horse had retreated a few steps, but remained nearby, watching the scene with alert eyes. "He just came to me." Elizabeth Harrington's piercing blue eyes narrowed as she studied Mia with the same appraising look she might give a horse at auction. Her riding crop tapped rhythmically against her polished boot. "That's impossible," she stated flatly. "Thunderbolt has thrown every trainer I've hired in the last 6 months. He's nearly killed 2 of them, yet here he is, gentle as a puppy, with a complete stranger in running shorts." The staff had formed a loose circle around them now, maintaining a respectful distance from both the horses and their employer. Their expressions ranged from confusion to suspicion. "Carson," Elizabeth called to the young trainer who had been handling Thunderbolt, "approach him slowly. Let's see if his newfound docility extends to you." The trainer edged forward, lead rope at the ready. The change in Thunderbolt was immediate and dramatic. His ears flattened against his head, teeth bared as he positioned himself between Mia and the approaching man. "Back off!" Elizabeth commanded sharply, and Carson retreated. The stallion instantly relaxed. Mia slowly rose to her feet, careful not to make any sudden movements. "I should go. My grandmother will worry if I'm late." "No." Elizabeth's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. "Not until I understand what's happening here." She turned to her estate manager. "James, call Dr. Whitman. Tell him it's an emergency." "The vet?" Mia asked, her hand unconsciously rising to stroke Thunderbolt's neck. The horse leaned into her touch like a house cat seeking affection. Elizabeth's eyebrows rose at this further display of unprecedented behavior. Thunderbolt is a $3 million investment who's been deemed unrideable by top trainers across the country. If you've somehow drugged him, or drugged him? Mia interrupted, her previous intimidation giving way to indignation. "I was just running on a public trail. I've never even touched a horse before today." The chestnut horse had edged closer now, nudging at Mia's pocket where she kept a half-eaten energy bar. Despite the tension, she couldn't help but laugh. "Sorry, buddy. Nothing for you." She glanced at Elizabeth. "Is that okay to say? I don't know proper horse etiquette." Something in Elizabeth's expression shifted slightly. "Atlas never approaches strangers either," she said quietly, more to herself than to Mia. "This doesn't make sense." Mia took a deep breath, trying to gather her composure. Look, Ms. Harrington, I understand your concern, but I really need to get home. My grandmother has Parkinson's, and she needs her medication by 6. Elizabeth studied her for a long moment before nodding to one of her staff. Andrea will drive you. James, have Carson and the others get these horses back to the stable carefully. We'll sort this out once Dr. Whitman arrives. I can't just leave, Mia protested. I need to finish my run and get home. My grandmother will receive a call explaining that you're helping us with an urgent situation, Elizabeth finished for her. You'll be compensated for your time, of course. Mia opened her mouth to object further, but was interrupted by Thunderbolt pressing his muzzle against her cheek in what felt oddly like reassurance. The familiar sensation returned, that inexplicable feeling that she somehow knew this animal, though she couldn't possibly. Fine, she conceded. But I need to be home by 7 for my shift at Daisy's diner. Elizabeth's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched again. You work at that roadside establishment? Among other places, Mia replied with a hint of defiance. Not all of us inherited horse estates. Instead of the angry response Mia expected, a fleeting look of something like respect crossed Elizabeth's face. What did you say your name was? Mia. Mia Reynolds. The effect of her name on Elizabeth was subtle but unmistakable, a slight stiffening of her shoulders, a momentary loss of her composed expression. Reynolds, she repeated, her voice carefully neutral. From Saguaro Valley? All my life, Mia confirmed, her curiosity piqued by the strange reaction. Why? Elizabeth ignored the question, turning instead to issue rapid instructions to her staff. 2 handlers were attempting to secure lead ropes to the horses, but Thunderbolt kept sidestepping them, returning to Mia's side. It seems we have only one solution, Elizabeth said finally. Ms. Reynolds, you'll need to walk Thunderbolt back to the stables yourself. Me? But I told you I've never... Just hold this, Elizabeth interrupted, handing her a lead rope. He's already chosen you for whatever reason. The rest of us will keep our distance. Uncertainly, Mia took the rope. Thunderbolt immediately lowered his head, allowing her to clip it to his halter without resistance. Remarkable, murmured Elizabeth, watching them. Dr. Whitman won't believe this. As they began the walk back to the main complex, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something much bigger than a simple case of a horse taking a liking to her. Elizabeth Harrington's reaction to her name, the strange familiarity she felt with Thunderbolt, none of it made sense. Ms. Harrington, she ventured, have we met before today? Elizabeth's pace didn't falter, her eyes fixed straight ahead. No, Mrs. Reynolds, but I believe I knew your father. Mia stopped walking, the lead rope slack in her suddenly numb fingers. Thunderbolt halted beside her, his massive body radiating warmth in the cooling desert evening. You knew my father. The question came out barely above a whisper. Elizabeth continued several paces before realizing Mia had stopped. She turned, her expression unreadable in the golden light of the setting sun. This isn't the place for that conversation, she said, gesturing toward the stables ahead. We should get Thunderbolt settled first. Mia stood her ground. No, you don't get to drop something like that and then just walk away. How did you know my father? Jack Reynolds died when I was 4 years old. A complex emotion crossed Elizabeth's face, something between discomfort and resignation. Jack worked here at Harrington Estates for nearly 7 years. He was our head stable hand. The revelation hit Mia like a physical blow. In all the stories her grandmother had told about her father, this detail had never been mentioned. Jack Reynolds had been a construction worker. That's what Margaret had always said. He died in an accident at a building site in Phoenix. That's not possible, Mia said, her voice stronger now. My grandmother would have told me. Elizabeth's gaze shifted to Thunderbolt, who had begun to nuzzle Mia's hair again, his movements gentle despite his size. Perhaps Margaret had her reasons for keeping certain things to herself. The familiar use of her grandmother's name was another shock. You know my grandmother too? Before Elizabeth could answer, a white pickup truck with Dr. Whitman, Equine Veterinary Services, emblazoned on the side, pulled up to the stable yard. A tall, lean man in his 60s emerged, carrying a medical bag. His weathered face broke into a smile when he spotted Elizabeth, but it quickly faded as he registered the tension in the scene before him. "Lizzie, what's the emergency?" he called, approaching with a practiced, unhurried gait that seemed designed not to spook the horses. "It's Thunderbolt," Elizabeth replied, momentarily distracted from their conversation. "He's displaying unprecedented behavior. I need you to check him for any signs of distress or illness." Dr. Whitman's eyes swept over the magnificent stallion, then settled on Mia with open curiosity. And who might this be? "Mia Reynolds," Elizabeth answered before Mia could speak. "Jack's daughter." The effect of these words on Dr. Whitman was immediate and dramatic. The veterinarian froze mid-step, his expression transforming from professional concern to utter astonishment. "Jack's little girl," he breathed, studying Mia's face with new intensity. "My God, it's been, 20 years? You knew my father, too." Mia felt like she had stumbled into an alternate reality where strangers knew more about her family than she did. Dr. Whitman exchanged a loaded glance with Elizabeth before answering. "I knew Jack very well. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "He was exceptional with horses. Had a gift unlike anything I've seen before or since." His eyes moved meaningfully to Thunderbolt. "Until now, perhaps." "What exactly is happening here?" Mia demanded, frustration building. "Why has everyone been lying to me about my father? And what does any of this have to do with this horse?" Elizabeth sighed, her composed facade cracking slightly. "Dr. Whitman, would you please examine Thunderbolt? Ms. Reynolds and I need to have a private conversation." The veterinarian nodded, approaching carefully. To everyone's surprise, Thunderbolt allowed him to come close, though the stallion kept turning his head to keep Mia in sight. "He's been like this since he first saw her," Elizabeth explained quietly to Dr. Whitman. "Complete personality transformation." "Fascinating," the vet murmured, beginning his examination. "Absolutely fascinating." Elizabeth gestured toward an elegant glass-walled structure attached to the main stables. "My office. We can talk there." Mia hesitated, reluctant to leave Thunderbolt after forming such an unexpected bond. "He'll be fine with Dr. Whitman," Elizabeth assured her, correctly reading her concern. "Robert was your father's closest friend on the estate." Reluctantly, Mia handed the lead rope to one of the waiting staff members. Thunderbolt snorted in protest but remained relatively calm as she stepped away. The interior of Elizabeth's office was a study in understated luxury: leather furniture, award plaques, and dozens of framed photographs chronicling generations of champion horses. Mia felt painfully out of place in her dusty running clothes and scuffed sneakers. "Sit, please," Elizabeth said, gesturing to a leather armchair as she settled behind a large oak desk. "Would you like some water?" "What I'd like are answers," Mia replied, remaining standing. "Why doesn't anything I know about my father match what you're telling me? Why would my grandmother lie about where he worked or how he died?" Elizabeth's perfectly manicured fingers drummed once on the desk before she stilled them. "Your grandmother didn't lie about Jack's death. He did die in an accident. What she apparently chose not to share was that the accident occurred here while he was working with a particularly challenging young colt." Mia sank slowly into the chair, her legs suddenly too weak to support her. Here, he died here, working with horses. Elizabeth nodded, her expression softening slightly. Jack Reynolds was the most talented horseman I've ever known. He had an almost supernatural ability to connect with troubled animals, horses that everyone else had given up on. Like Thunderbolt, Mia whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. No, Ms. Reynolds, Elizabeth said quietly. Not like Thunderbolt. With Thunderbolt? Mia's eyes widened. What are you saying? Thunderbolt was just a foal when your father was working here. Jack hand-raised him from birth. The colt's mother died during delivery. They formed an exceptional bond. Elizabeth paused, her gaze drifting to a photograph on the wall that Mia hadn't noticed before. In it, a young man with Mia's same warm brown eyes was cradling a gangly black foal. That was taken about 3 weeks before the accident. But that would make Thunderbolt over 20 years old, Mia said, confusion evident in her voice. Elizabeth shook her head. That's Midnight Storm, Thunderbolt's sire. Thunderbolt is his son, born 5 years ago, but the resemblance is remarkable. Same temperament too, brilliant but volatile. Jack was the only one who could handle Storm consistently. And now Thunderbolt is responding to me, Mia said slowly, connecting the pieces, because I'm Jack's daughter. It seems the most likely explanation, Elizabeth agreed. Horses have extraordinary sensory abilities. Thunderbolt may recognize something of your father in your scent, your movements, perhaps even the way you breathe. She leaned forward, her eyes intent on Mia's face. But that doesn't fully explain the intensity of his reaction to you today. In 20 years of breeding and training horses, I've never seen anything quite like it. Mia stared at the photograph of her father holding the black foal, emotions churning inside her like a desert storm. The man in the image was younger than in the few pictures her grandmother had kept, his face more carefree, his smile wider. He looked happy, completely in his element. I don't understand, she said finally, her voice barely steady. Why would Grandma hide this from me? Why pretend he was a construction worker who died in Phoenix? Elizabeth sighed, leaning back in her chair. After Jack's death, there was tension between your grandmother and the Harrington family. My father owned the estate then. Tension, Mia pressed. Elizabeth's perfectly composed expression faltered momentarily. Your grandmother blamed us for the accident, perhaps rightly so. She paused, choosing her words carefully. My father had acquired a valuable but notoriously difficult stallion from overseas. Everyone advised against putting anyone in the stall with him, but Jack insisted he could connect with the animal. He'd done it countless times before. And something went wrong, Mia finished quietly. Elizabeth nodded. Catastrophically wrong. Jack suffered fatal injuries before anyone could intervene. Your grandmother was understandably devastated. She threatened legal action initially, but eventually settled for a confidential payment and the condition that she never had to hear the name Harrington again. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Whitman entered, his expression thoughtful. Thunderbolt is in perfect health, he reported. Temperature, heart rate, respiration, all normal. I've drawn blood to be sure, but there's nothing physically wrong with him. He turned to Mia. He's agitated that you're not with him, though. Keeps looking toward this building. That fits the pattern, Elizabeth mused. Complete fixation. She studied Mia with renewed intensity. Did you ever show any interest in horses growing up? Any unusual connections with animals? Mia shook her head slowly. We could never afford pets, and my grandmother always steered me away from anything to do with horses. If there was a movie with horses, we changed the channel. If a field trip involved a stable, she wouldn't sign the permission slip. The pieces were finally clicking into place. she was deliberately keeping me away from them because they reminded her of Jack and how she lost him, Dr. Whitman suggested gently. Or because she was afraid you'd show the same gift and meet the same end, Elizabeth added, her tone matter of fact. The office fell silent as they all contemplated this possibility. Outside, the golden Arizona sunset had given way to the deep blue of early evening. Mia suddenly remembered her grandmother waiting at home. "I need to call her," she said, reaching for her phone. "She'll be worried sick." "Of course," Elizabeth nodded, rising from her desk. "Use my office. Dr. Whitman and I will check on Thunderbolt." As they left, Mia heard Elizabeth murmuring to the veterinarian, "Have you ever seen anything like this, Robert?" "It's almost as if Jack's come back through her," he finished, his voice fading as they walked away. Mia's call to her grandmother was brief and tense. Margaret Reynolds listened in silence as Mia explained where she was, then responded with uncharacteristic sharpness. "Come home right now, Amelia Jane. That place is nothing but heartache." "Grandma, I need to know the truth about Dad." "About what happened to him?" A long pause followed. "The truth won't bring him back," Margaret finally said, her voice cracking. "All it will do is pull you into the same dangerous world that took him from us." "I deserve to know," Mia insisted gently. Another silence. "Yes," her grandmother conceded at last. "I suppose you do, but not over the phone." "Come home, and I'll tell you everything. I'll be there soon," Mia promised, ending the call with a mixture of anticipation and dread. When she stepped outside, the night air had cooled considerably. The vast, star-filled Arizona sky stretched overhead, a stunning canopy that usually brought Mia peace. Tonight, however, her mind was too turbulent to appreciate the beauty. She followed the sound of soft voices to a large, well-lit stable where Elizabeth and Dr. Whitman stood outside a spacious stall. Inside, Thunderbolt paced restlessly, occasionally pawing at the ground. "He won't settle," Elizabeth explained as Mia approached. "We've tried everything." As soon as Thunderbolt spotted Mia, he whinnied softly and moved to the front of the stall, extending his head over the door toward her. Without thinking, she reached out to stroke his muzzle. The horse immediately relaxed, leaning into her touch. "Extraordinary," Dr. Whitman murmured, making notes on a small pad. "The heart rate drops immediately when you make contact. I can see it in his breathing, his eye movement, his entire demeanor." "I need to go home," Mia said reluctantly, continuing to stroke the magnificent animal. "My grandmother is waiting." Elizabeth nodded. "Of course. James will drive you." She hesitated, then added, "But I'd like you to consider coming back tomorrow. With your permission, I'd like to try some controlled interactions between you and Thunderbolt, for research purposes. And I'd be happy to explain more about your father's work here," Dr. Whitman added kindly. "Jack was my friend. I have stories that might help you understand him better." Mia's hand stilled on Thunderbolt's neck. The horse nudged her gently, encouraging her to continue. "I'll think about it," she said finally, "but right now, I need to hear my grandmother's side of the story." Elizabeth reached into her pocket and handed Mia a business card. "My personal number is on the back. Call me when you're ready. And Mia..." She paused, something almost vulnerable crossing her usually composed features. "Whatever Margaret tells you tonight, please remember there are always multiple perspectives to any tragedy." Mia accepted the card, nodding silently as she gave Thunderbolt one final pat. The stallion watched her intently as she walked away, his eyes reflecting the stable lights like liquid amber pools of ancient wisdom. The drive back to Mia's modest home on the outskirts of Saguaro Valley passed in silence. James, Elizabeth's estate manager, seemed to sense Mia's need for quiet reflection and didn't attempt small talk. When they pulled up to the small, weathered ranch house with its peeling paint and carefully tended desert garden, he simply handed her a card similar to Elizabeth's. "If you need anything," he said quietly. "Good day or night." Mia nodded her thanks and stepped out of the luxury SUV, feeling the stark contrast between the vehicle and her humble surroundings. As James drove away, she took a deep breath before walking up the cracked concrete path to the front door. Inside, the familiar scent of her grandmother's chamomile tea filled the small living room. Margaret Reynolds sat in her worn recliner, hands trembling slightly. Whether from her Parkinson's or emotion, Mia couldn't tell. At 72, Margaret's once vibrant red hair had faded to silver, but her green eyes, so different from Mia's and Jack's brown ones, remained sharp and alert. "So you found your way to Harrington Estates," Margaret said without preamble. It wasn't a question. Mia set her keys on the small table by the door. "Not intentionally. I was just running on the trail, like I do every day." "And Thunderbolt found you," Margaret replied, surprising Mia with her knowledge of the horse's name. "How did you—" "Sit down, Amelia." Margaret rarely used Mia's full name unless the matter was serious. "There's a lot to tell, and my strength isn't what it used to be." Mia settled onto the threadbare couch across from her grandmother, noticing for the first time a dusty photo album on the coffee table between them. She'd never seen it before. "This was your father's," Margaret explained, following Mia's gaze. She leaned forward with effort and opened the album to reveal photographs Mia had never seen. Her father with various horses, laughing with Dr. Whitman, even a few with a much younger Elizabeth Harrington. "Why, Grandma?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you hide all this from me?" Margaret's weathered hands traced the outline of Jack's face in one of the photos. "To protect you from them, from that life." She looked up, her eyes suddenly fierce. "And from yourself? What do you mean, from myself?" Margaret sighed, the sound heavy with years of carefully guarded secrets. "Your father had a gift, Mia. Something that couldn't be explained or taught. Animals, especially horses, responded to him in ways that defied normal understanding. It wasn't just that he was good with them, it was almost supernatural." Mia thought of Thunderbolt's immediate and inexplicable connection to her. "And you think I might have the same gift?" "I've always known you did," Margaret replied softly. "Even as a baby, birds would land on your crib. Stray dogs would follow you. I saw the signs." Her hands trembled more visibly now. "It terrified me, because of how Dad died." Margaret nodded, her eyes filling with tears. Jack was fearless with animals. Too fearless. He believed he could connect with any horse, no matter how dangerous. She turned a page in the album to reveal a newspaper clipping. "Tragedy at Harrington Estates. Skilled handler killed by imported stallion." "Sultan's Thunder," Mia read from the headline. That was the horse. "A monster disguised as a champion," Margaret said bitterly. Victor Harrington, Elizabeth's father, paid a fortune for that animal, knowing its violent history. 3 handlers injured in Europe, but Victor was determined to add its bloodline to his breeding program. Your father insisted he could gentle the stallion. And Sultan's Thunder is Midnight Storm's sire, Margaret confirmed. Thunderbolt's grandfather. That bloodline carries both exceptional talent and dangerous volatility. Victor valued the talent enough to risk lives for it. Her voice hardened. "And Jack's life?" Mia leaned forward, absorbing this new information. Elizabeth said there was a settlement. Margaret's laugh held no humor. Victor Harrington's version of conscience money. Enough to buy this house and support us for a while, in exchange for my silence and a signed agreement never to pursue legal action. She shook her head. I took it because I had you to think about. A 4-year-old who'd just lost her father and whose mother had disappeared years before. The mention of Mia's mother, a topic rarely discussed, momentarily diverted her attention. Is there something about Mom in all this, too? No, Margaret said firmly. Cynthia's abandonment has nothing to do with the Harringtons. That's a different pain altogether. She reached across to take Mia's hand. The point is, I kept you away from horses, from the Harringtons, from anything that might awaken the same gift that got your father killed. I wanted you safe, but hiding my father's true life from me, making up a story about a construction accident. How could I explain to a child that her father died because he believed he could communicate with dangerous animals? That he had some mystical connection that made him reckless? Margaret's eyes pleaded for understanding. It was easier to tell you he was a construction worker. Normal, safe, and it kept you from becoming curious about horses or the Harrington estate. Mia pulled her hand away gently. Until today, when Thunderbolt broke through a fence to find me. History repeating itself, Margaret whispered, fear evident in her expression. That's what terrifies me, Mia. The Harrington horses recognized something in Jack that made them trust him completely, and that same connection ultimately killed him. She gripped the arms of her chair. And now Thunderbolt has found the same thing in you. Elizabeth wants me to come back tomorrow, Mia said, to try some controlled interactions with Thunderbolt for research. Of course she does, Margaret scoffed. Her $3 million investment suddenly responds to someone after months of being unrideable. She sees dollar signs, not your safety. Dr. Whitman will be there. He said he was Dad's friend. Margaret's expression softened slightly. Robert Whitman is a good man. He tried to stop your father from entering that stall. She shook her head. But even he couldn't counter the Harrington influence once they set their minds on something. She turned another page in the album, revealing a photo that made Mia's breath catch. Her father, sitting cross-legged in a stall, a tiny black foal curled up asleep with its head in his lap. The love in Jack's expression was palpable. That's Midnight Storm as a newborn, Margaret explained. His mother died giving birth. Jack bottle-fed him every 2 hours for weeks, slept in the stall with him. Her voice grew distant with memory. I bring you to visit sometimes. You were just a toddler. Jack would hold you on his lap while he fed Stormy's bottle. The foal would nuzzle your little hands afterward. I was there, Mia whispered, staring at the photograph. I met Midnight Storm. Many times. You loved that foal almost as much as your father did. Margaret closed her eyes briefly, which is why, when Jack died, I had to get you away from there completely. The connection was already forming. I could see it. Mia sat back, overwhelmed by revelations that were rewriting her entire understanding of her past. Thunderbolt looks exactly like him, like Midnight Storm. That bloodline breeds true, Margaret nodded. In appearance and temperament, she fixed Mia with an intent gaze, which is why you need to stay away from that place, Mia. Whatever connection you felt today, it's the same one that led your father to his death. Mia stood up, needing to move as her thoughts raced. But what if it's not, Grandma? What if this gift isn't a curse? What if it's something that was meant to be part of my life? That's exactly what Jack said, Margaret replied, her voice breaking. The day before he died. Mia barely slept that night. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Thunderbolt's intense gaze, felt the gentle press of his muzzle against her cheek. Intertwined with these fresh memories were newly discovered images of her father, Jack Reynolds, cradling a newborn midnight storm. Jack laughing alongside Dr. Whitman. Jack looking so alive among the horses that had ultimately led to his death. By dawn, she had made her decision. After helping her grandmother with breakfast and morning medication, Mia sat across from Margaret at their small kitchen table. "I'm going back to Harrington Estates today," she said gently but firmly. Margaret's spoon clattered against her cereal bowl. "Mia, please, you don't understand the danger." "I understand that I've spent 24 years not knowing a fundamental truth about who my father was," Mia interrupted, "about who I might be." She reached across the table to take her grandmother's trembling hand. "I need to understand this connection, Grandma. I need to know why Thunderbolt responded to me that way. What about your shift at the diner? I called Daisy. She's giving me the day off." Mia hesitated before adding, "And Ms. Harrington is paying me for my time." Margaret's expression hardened. "So she's buying your cooperation, just like her father tried to buy my silence." "It's not like that," Mia protested. "I need the money, you know that." "Your medication alone. We've managed for 20 years without Harrington money," Margaret said stiffly. "We can continue to manage." Mia took a deep breath, trying to remain patient. "This isn't just about money. It's about discovering a part of myself that's been hidden from me my entire life." She squeezed her grandmother's hand. "I'm not Dad, Grandma. I'll be careful. Dr. Whitman will be there the whole time." Margaret held Mia's gaze for a long moment before her shoulders slumped in resignation. "Your father said the same thing, that he'd be careful." She pulled her hand away to wipe at a tear. "The gift makes you feel invincible, Mia. That's what makes it so dangerous." Before Mia could respond, a knock sounded at the front door. Through the window, she could see one of Harrington Estates' luxury SUVs parked in front of their modest home. James stood on the porch, his posture respectful but eager. "They didn't waste any time," Margaret muttered. "I called Elizabeth this morning," Mia explained. "She offered to send a car." She stood, gathering her small backpack. "I'll be home for dinner, I promise." Margaret reached for her cane, pushing herself up from the table with effort. "Wait." She disappeared into her bedroom, returning moments later with a small wooden box that Mia had never seen before. "Take this with you." Mia opened the box to find a worn leather bracelet inside, braided intricately with horsehair of various colors. "Your father made it," Margaret explained. "Each strand comes from a different horse he helped heal or train. He called it his good luck charm." Her voice caught. "He wasn't wearing it the day of the accident. He'd left it here because one of the strands had come loose, and I'd promised to repair it." Mia carefully tied the bracelet around her wrist, feeling an unexpected surge of emotion at this tangible connection to her father. "Thank you," she whispered, embracing her grandmother. "I'll be careful, I promise. Just come home, Mia," Margaret replied, holding her tightly. "That's all I ask." The drive to Harrington Estates was markedly different from the previous evening. In daylight, Mia could fully appreciate the transition from her humble neighborhood to the manicured opulence of the equestrian center. Rolling green pastures seemed almost defiant against the desert landscape, testament to the wealth required to maintain such lushness in Arizona's arid climate. James maintained a respectful silence for most of the journey, only speaking as they approached the main entrance. "Everyone's quite excited about your visit today, Mrs. Reynolds. Thunderbolt's behavior is all anyone can talk about. Has he ever connected with anyone else before?" Mia asked, absently touching her father's bracelet. "Not like this," James replied, shaking his head. "He's tolerated certain handlers more than others, but he's never shown actual affection or preference until you." As they pulled up to the main complex, Mia was surprised to see not only Elizabeth and Dr. Whitman waiting, but a small group of additional people, all watching her arrival with undisguised curiosity. "I didn't realize this would be such a public event," she murmured. James offered an apologetic smile. "Word travels fast around here. That's Carson, Thunderbolt's regular trainer," he explained, pointing to the young man Mia recognized from yesterday. "And the others are various trainers, exercise riders and grooms. Everyone's interested in the miracle worker who tamed our most difficult resident." "I didn't tame anything," Mia protested as she stepped out of the vehicle. "It was just, I don't know what it was." "That's what we hope to find out," Elizabeth said, approaching with brisk efficiency. She was dressed more casually today in riding breeches and a tailored blouse, but still managed to project an aura of authority. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Reynolds." "Mia, please," she insisted, uncomfortable with the formality. "Mia," Elizabeth agreed with a nod. "Dr. Whitman has designed a series of controlled interactions to help us understand your connection with Thunderbolt. With your permission, we'd like to document everything, notes, photographs, perhaps some video." Dr. Whitman stepped forward, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "Nothing invasive, I promise. Just observation." His gaze fell to the bracelet on Mia's wrist, and something like recognition flashed across his face. "Is that my father's?" Mia confirmed. "Grandma gave it to me this morning." A complex emotion crossed the veterinarian's features. Jack never went near a difficult horse without it, said it connected him to every success he'd ever had. He cleared his throat. "It's good to see it again." Elizabeth gestured toward the main stable. "Shall we begin? Thunderbolt has been quite agitated this morning, as if he knows you're coming." As they walked, Mia became acutely aware of the stares following her, some curious, others skeptical. She heard whispered fragments. "Jack Reynolds' daughter. Impossible after all this time." Just like her father. The main stable was a marvel of design, spacious, immaculately clean, with high ceilings and state-of-the-art ventilation. Each stall was larger than Mia's bedroom at home, with custom nameplates identifying the valuable occupants. They approached a stall at the far end, set slightly apart from the others. The nameplate read Thunderbolt in elegant script, with championship titles listed beneath. Even before she could see inside, Mia heard a soft, nickering sound. "He's been doing that all morning," Carson said, falling into step beside them. "Never heard him make that sound before. Usually, it's just angry snorts and stomping." When they reached the stall, Thunderbolt was waiting, his magnificent head already extended over the door as if he'd been expecting them. The moment his eyes found Mia, his entire demeanor softened visibly. The nickering sound came again, gentle and welcoming. "Remarkable," murmured Elizabeth. "Absolutely remarkable." Without thinking, Mia approached and placed her hand on the stallion's muzzle. Thunderbolt leaned into her touch immediately, his eyes half closing in contentment. She felt something then, a strange, almost electric current passing between them. Not unpleasant, but definitely unusual. "Did you feel that, Doctor?" Whitman asked sharply, watching her reaction. Mia nodded, surprised. "How did you know?" "Your father described it. A connection, like a current or vibration." The veterinarian was making rapid notes. He said it was how he knew which horses he could help and which would respond to him. Carson looked skeptical. "With all due respect, that sounds like New Age nonsense. Horses respond to confidence, consistent handling, and proper training techniques. Science doesn't yet have explanations for everything we observe, Mr. Lewis." Dr. Whitman replied mildly. "Jack Reynolds consistently achieved results that defied conventional understanding, and yet he still ended up killed by a horse," Carson muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Mia felt a chill at the callous reference to her father's death, but before she could respond, Elizabeth stepped in. "That's enough, Carson," she said sharply. "If you can't contribute professionally to this observation, you're welcome to return to your regular duties." The young trainer flushed but stood his ground. "I just think we should be cautious about encouraging Miss Reynolds to believe she has some magical connection to a dangerous animal. It's irresponsible." "Your concern is noted," Elizabeth replied coldly. "Now shall we proceed with the first test?" Dr. Whitman consulted his tablet, reviewing the testing protocol he had developed overnight. "For our first observation, we'll assess Thunderbolt's response to Mia compared to others. Carson, please enter the adjacent empty stall. Mia, you'll remain here." The trainer complied, though his expression remained skeptical. Once in position, Dr. Whitman continued, "Carson, please call Thunderbolt using your normal training commands." Carson clicked his tongue and called firmly, "Thunderbolt, attention, come here, boy." The stallion's ears twitched slightly in acknowledgement, but he remained pressed against the stall door near Mia, showing no interest in his regular handler. "Now, Mia, please step back about 10 feet, Dr. Whitman instructed. "Don't say anything." "Let's see if Thunderbolt follows your movement," Mia complied, backing away slowly. Immediately, Thunderbolt became agitated, pawing at the ground and trying to maintain visual contact with her. When she stopped, he stretched his neck as far as possible in her direction. "Fascinating," murmured Elizabeth, who was filming the interaction on her phone. "Now please, Mia, return to the stall, but don't make eye contact with him. Look down or away." As Mia approached while looking at the ground, Thunderbolt's agitation increased. He snorted and tossed his head, clearly disturbed by her lack of direct engagement. The moment she looked up and met his gaze, he immediately calmed, nickering softly. "It's as if he needs the connection to be mutual," Dr. Whitman observed, making notes. "Not just proximity, but acknowledgement." Over the next hour, they ran through various tests. Mia was asked to whisper instructions that Thunderbolt had never been trained to follow, and watched in amazement as the stallion complied instantly. When Carson attempted the same commands using identical wording and volume, Thunderbolt ignored him completely. In another test, they had Mia place her hand on Thunderbolt's neck while Dr. Whitman monitored his vital signs. The stallion's heart rate dropped significantly at her touch, only to spike again when she removed her hand. "This goes beyond normal horse-human bonding," Dr. Whitman concluded, reviewing his data. "It's reminiscent of what Jack could do, but even more pronounced." Elizabeth nodded thoughtfully. "Let's move to the arena for the next phase." Mia felt a flutter of nervousness. "What exactly are we testing now?" "Thunderbolt's response to you in an open space," Elizabeth explained. "We need to see if he'll actually allow you to work with him beyond basic interaction." Carson frowned. "Miss Harrington, with all due respect, that's moving too fast. Thunderbolt has thrown experienced riders with years of training. Ms. Reynolds has no equestrian experience whatsoever." "I'm not suggesting she ride him," Elizabeth clarified. "Just lead him through some basic ground exercises." "Even that could be dangerous," Carson insisted. "This horse is unpredictable at best, dangerous at worst." "Not with her," Dr. Whitman countered, gesturing toward the stall where Thunderbolt remained fixated on Mia. "Look at him. He's a different animal in her presence. One day of unusual behavior doesn't erase years of established patterns," Carson argued. "Mr. Reynolds probably thought he had Sultan's thunder under control too, until—" "That's enough," Elizabeth cut him off sharply. "Mia will be perfectly safe in the arena with proper supervision. Thunderbolt clearly poses no threat to her." Despite Elizabeth's confidence, Mia felt a chill at Carson's words. Her grandmother's warnings echoed in her mind. The gift makes you feel invincible. That's what makes it so dangerous. Nevertheless, she found herself walking beside Thunderbolt toward the main arena minutes later, the stallion following her lead rope with unprecedented docility. Several staff members stopped their work to watch, their expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. "Has anyone ever seen Thunderbolt this calm outside his stall?" one groom whispered to another. "Never," came the response. Last time Carson tried to lead him to the arena, he nearly took out 3 fence posts trying to get away. The arena itself was impressive, a vast expanse of perfectly maintained footing surrounded by white fencing, with viewing stands along one side. Currently empty except for their small group, it somehow felt both intimate and intimidating. "Let's start with something simple," Dr. Whitman suggested once they were inside. "Oh, just walk him in a circle around you, maintaining the lead rope contact." Mia nodded, tightening her grip on the rope. She began walking, and Thunderbolt matched her pace precisely, his massive body moving with fluid grace beside her. "Now try changing direction," Elizabeth called from where she stood with Dr. Whitman. Mia stopped and turned. Without any verbal command or tug on the rope, Thunderbolt adjusted his position to face the new direction and waited for her to resume walking. "He's anticipating her movements," Dr. Whitman noted with excitement, reading her body language at an extraordinary level. Emboldened by the stallion's responsiveness, Mia tried something more challenging. She pictured her father, what little she could remember of him, and imagined what he might do. Following pure instinct, she released the lead rope entirely, letting it fall to the ground. "Mia, don't!" Carson called in alarm. But Thunderbolt remained perfectly positioned beside her, matching her pace as she walked forward, then stopped, then turned again. It was as if an invisible connection had replaced the physical one, guiding him in perfect harmony with her movements. "Remarkable," Elizabeth breathed. "Absolutely remarkable." Mia felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if she had done this before, in another time. Without thinking, she placed her hand on Thunderbolt's powerful shoulder and found herself speaking words she didn't consciously formulate. "You remember, don't you?" she whispered to the stallion. "Not me exactly, but something familiar. Someone we both lost." Thunderbolt lowered his head to gently touch her shoulder with his muzzle, his breath warm against her skin. The electric sensation returned, stronger now, almost like a current flowing between them. Dr. Whitman approached slowly, careful not to disturb their connection. "Mia, I'd like to try something if you're willing. I want to introduce Midnight Storm." Mia looked up in surprise. "So he's still alive?" "Very much so," Elizabeth confirmed. "He's 22 now, retired from breeding and competition, but healthy and strong. He lives in our senior pasture with a few other retired champions." "Jack's bond with Storm was extraordinary," Dr. Whitman explained. "Wonder if your connection has any genetic component, from either your side or the horse's. We might see an interesting reaction when you meet Storm." A ripple of anticipation ran through Mia. The horse her father had hand-raised, the one she had apparently met as a toddler but had no conscious memory of. What would happen when they came face to face again after 20 years? "I'd like that," she said softly. Elizabeth made a quick call on her phone, and minutes later, the arena gate opened. A groom led in a magnificent black stallion, noticeably older than Thunderbolt but still powerfully built, with the same distinctive white blaze down his face. Where Thunderbolt's coat gleamed with the shine of youth, Midnight Storm's had a distinguished silvering around his muzzle and eyes. The resemblance between father and son was unmistakable, yet there was something dignified about Storm's bearing that suggested wisdom gained through years of experience. As the older stallion was brought into the arena, Thunderbolt's ears pricked forward with recognition, but he made no move to leave Mia's side. The groom led Storm to within about 30 feet of them, then stopped, waiting for further instructions. "What now?" Mia asked, suddenly nervous. "Let's see if Storm recognizes you," Dr. Whitman replied, or more accurately, if he recognizes Jack's daughter. The groom released Storm's lead rope at Dr. Whitman's signal. For a moment, the older stallion stood perfectly still, assessing the situation. His intelligent eyes moved from Thunderbolt to Mia, then fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Slowly, with the deliberate grace of an elder statesman, Midnight Storm began walking toward Mia. Thunderbolt remained beside her, uncharacteristically deferential to his sire's approach. As Storm drew closer, Mia noticed his nostrils flaring, taking in her scent. She held perfectly still, uncertain what to expect, but somehow unafraid. When the older stallion reached her, he performed the same gentle assessment Thunderbolt had the day before, sniffing her hair, her hands, her clothing. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he lowered himself to his knees before her, a position of complete vulnerability for a horse. "Oh my God," the groom gasped. "I've never seen him do that with anyone except—" "Jack," Dr. Whitman finished, his voice thick with emotion. "He used to kneel like that when Jack would enter his stall after being away. It was their special greeting." Mia felt tears pricking at her eyes. Without conscious thought, she knelt alongside the powerful animal and wrapped her arms around his neck. "You remember," she whispered. "You remember everything, don't you?" Midnight Storm's eyes seemed to hold decades of memories as he gently pressed his head against her. In that moment, Mia felt a connection not just to the horse, but through him to her father, a tangible link to the man she had barely known. Thunderbolt stood watching them, and Mia extended her hand to include him in the moment. The younger stallion stepped forward, creating a triangle of connection between the three of them. "I've never seen anything like this," Elizabeth murmured, her typical composure momentarily abandoned in the face of the extraordinary scene before her. Only Carson remained unmoved, his arms crossed defensively across his chest. "It's impressive. I'll grant you that," he said to Elizabeth. "But what exactly do you plan to do with this, whatever it is?" Thunderbolt was purchased as a competition horse, not a sideshow attraction. Elizabeth's expression hardened at his tone. "Carson, I think it's time we discussed your attitude, perhaps in private." As Elizabeth led the disgruntled trainer away, Dr. Whitman approached Mia, who still knelt between the two stallions. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Mia nodded, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't fully articulate. "I feel like I've found something I didn't even know I was missing." The veterinarian smiled kindly. "Jack would be so proud to see this. He always believed this gift would continue in you." "He knew?" Mia looked up in surprise. "He knew I had this connection with horses." Dr. Whitman's expression shifted subtly, as if he'd said more than he intended. "Perhaps we should take a break. There's something you should see. Something your father left for you, in case this day ever came." Dr. Whitman led Mia away from the arena, leaving Thunderbolt and Midnight Storm in the care of experienced grooms. The two stallions seemed reluctant to let her go, following her with their eyes until she disappeared from view. Even more surprisingly, they remained standing peacefully side by side, a stark contrast to Thunderbolt's typically antisocial behavior with other horses. "Jack always said horses never forget," Dr. Whitman remarked as they walked toward the main office building. "Most people think that's just a saying, but your father believed it was literal truth. He claimed horses carry memories across generations. that knowledge passes from sire to offspring in ways science hasn't yet explained. "Is that why Thunderbolt recognized me?" Mia asked. "Because of Midnight Storm's memories of my father, of me as a child. Perhaps," Dr. Whitman nodded, "or perhaps it's something in your DNA, a scent marker, a pheromone pattern similar to Jack's. Your father was convinced there was a physiological component to his gift, something that could be inherited." He glanced at her with a thoughtful expression. He was preparing for that possibility long before. He let the sentence trail off as they reached a small stone cottage set apart from the main estate buildings. Unlike the modern, luxurious structures that dominated Harrington Estates, this building had a rustic charm that spoke of an earlier era. "This was your father's office," Dr. Whitman explained, pulling out a key ring. "After the accident, Victor Harrington wanted everything cleared out, but Elizabeth insisted it be preserved. I don't think anyone's been inside for years except for basic maintenance." He unlocked the heavy wooden door, which creaked open to reveal a space frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams that streamed through the windows, illuminating a modest desk, bookshelves packed with equine medicine and training manuals, and walls covered with photographs of horses, many with Jack Reynolds standing proudly beside them. Mia stepped inside, overwhelmed by the sense of her father's presence. His coffee mug still sat on the desk, a faded Arizona State University logo barely visible beneath a layer of dust. A jacket hung on a hook by the door, worn leather with a tear in one sleeve that had been carefully mended. "It's exactly as he left it," she whispered, trailing her fingers along the desk's edge. "Elizabeth wouldn't have it any other way," Dr. Whitman replied. She and Jack had a complicated relationship, but she respected his gifts immensely. He moved to a painting on the wall, a beautiful rendering of a black stallion that could only be a younger Midnight Storm. Carefully, he removed the painting to reveal a small wall safe behind it. "Jack changed the combination to this safe a week before the accident," he explained, turning the dial with practiced movements. "He told me the new number was something only his daughter would know someday, if she ever came looking." Mia's heart raced as the veterinarian stepped aside. "I don't know any combination, not consciously perhaps," Dr. Whitman said, "but Jack believed some knowledge exists beyond conscious memory. Try." Hesitantly, Mia approached the safe. The dial was old-fashioned, requiring a sequence of turns to specific numbers. As she touched it, that same strange current she'd felt with the horses seemed to flow through her fingertips. Without understanding why, she began to turn the dial right to 15, left to 24, right to 7. The safe clicked open. "How did I?" she began, staring at her own hand in disbelief. "May 15th, 2007, Dr. Whitman said quietly. "The day Jack died." Mia's hand trembled as she pulled the safe door open. Inside was a single item, a weathered leather journal with a braided horsehair bookmark similar to the bracelet she now wore. She lifted it carefully, feeling its weight, the weight of her father's thoughts, preserved for 2 decades. "He started writing this when you were born," Dr. Whitman explained, "when he first noticed signs that you might share his ability. The entries became more frequent after your 3rd birthday, when you began showing unmistakable signs of the gift." Mia opened the journal to the first page, where her father's bold handwriting filled the cream-colored paper. February 12th, 2000. Amelia Jane Reynolds came into this world today, and already I can see it in her eyes, the same awareness, the same connection to the living world around her that I've carried all my life. Margaret thinks I'm imagining things, projecting my own traits onto an innocent newborn, but I know, a father knows. The birds outside her hospital window gathered on the ledge when the nurses brought her to me. They never do that. She is special. She is like me. And I will teach her everything I know about this gift, this blessing and burden we share. Tears blurred Mia's vision as she flipped forward through the pages, catching glimpses of her early childhood through her father's eyes. Mia, just 14 months old, surrounded by butterflies in the garden, laughing as they landed on her outstretched fingers, 2 years and 3 months, whispering to a frightened colt while the trainer watched in amazement as the animal calmed instantly. 3 years old, falling asleep in Storm's stall, the powerful stallion standing guard over her, refusing to let anyone but me approach. He documented everything, Dr. Whitman said softly, every sign, every incident that confirmed his belief in your inherited abilities. Mia turned to the final entry, dated just days before Jack's death. May 10th, 2007. Sultan's thunder arrived today. Victor is convinced he'll be the cornerstone of a new breeding line, but the stallion's reputation precedes him. 3 handlers injured in Europe, 1 critically. Victor sees only the potential profit in his bloodline, not the danger in his spirit. I told Margaret I can reach him, gentle him, the way I've done with dozens of troubled horses before. She fears for me, and I understand why. But this is who I am, this is what I was born to do, and someday it will be what Mia does too. I've arranged everything in case the worst happens. This journal, the combination only she will somehow know, the trust fund with Whitman as executor. If I'm not there to teach her, these pages will have to guide her when her gift fully awakens. Sultan's thunder is dangerous. Yes, but there is no such thing as an evil horse, only injured souls, misunderstood spirits. I see something in his eyes that others miss. Not malice, but pain. I can heal that. I know I can. Tomorrow we begin. I pray that Mia will never need to read these words, that I'll be there to teach her myself. But if fate decides otherwise, and someday my daughter follows in my footsteps, let her know this. The gift is not a curse. It's a responsibility, a bridge between worlds. Use it wisely, my little butterfly. Trust it, but never let it make you reckless. The journal ended there. Mia closed it carefully, her hands shaking. Trust fund? She asked, looking up at Dr. Whitman. The veterinarian nodded, his expression grave. Jack set up a trust for your education, accessible when you turn 21. The notifications were sent to your grandmother's address, but... She never told me, Mia finished, a new understanding dawning. She was trying to keep me away from all this, from anything that might awaken the gift. She clutched the journal tighter. How much? How much money has been sitting there while we struggled to pay for her medications, for the house? Enough for a college education at any university you might choose, Dr. Whitman replied quietly. Plus some additional funds. Jack had a small life insurance policy, and Victor Harrington added to it considerably after the accident. More guilt money, as your grandmother would say. Mia felt a surge of conflicting emotions, anger at her grandmother's deception, grief for the father, whose foresight she was only now discovering, and a strange sense of purpose taking root within her. There's something else you should know, Dr. Whitman continued. Well, your father was developing a theory about the gift, documenting it in scientific terms. He believed certain people possess a neurological variation that allows them to process animal sensory input differently, to literally tune into wavelengths of communication most humans can't perceive, and he thought I had this variation. He was certain of it. The trust fund wasn't just for college, it was to fund research into this phenomenon if you chose to pursue it. Dr. Whitman hesitated. Jack believed understanding the science behind the gift could help protect those who possessed it, make it less dangerous. Before Mia could respond, the door to the cottage burst open. Elizabeth stood there, her typically composed expression replaced by one of urgent concern. "There you are," she said breathlessly. "You need to come quickly. There's a problem with Thunderbolt." "What kind of problem?" Dr. Whitman asked, immediately alert. "Carson tried to assert control after you left," Elizabeth explained, her voice tight with anger. "Against my explicit instructions. Now Thunderbolt's reverted to his most aggressive state. He's injured 2 handlers already, and he's threatening anyone who comes near. Even Storm can't calm him." "What was Carson thinking?" Dr. Whitman demanded as they hurried from the cottage. "He was thinking about his job," Elizabeth replied grimly. "He believes Mia's connection with Thunderbolt threatens his position here. He wanted to prove the horse still responds to traditional training methods." As they approached the arena, they could hear the commotion, shouts from staff members, the sharp crack of a whip, and the terrified, enraged cries of a horse in distress. Mia broke into a run, clutching her father's journal tightly against her chest, his final written words echoing in her mind. "Trust it, but never let it make you reckless." The scene at the arena was chaos incarnate. Staff members were retreating behind barriers, some helping 2 injured handlers limp to safety. Inside the enclosure, Thunderbolt reared and struck out with his powerful hooves, his earlier gentleness replaced by blind fury. Even Midnight Storm, who stood at a cautious distance, seemed unable to influence his agitated son. Carson stood at the center of it all, whip in hand, his face flushed with frustration and fear. "Get back!" he shouted as Thunderbolt charged toward him, barely missing as the trainer dove for safety. Elizabeth grabbed Mia's arm as she approached the fence. "Stay back. He's reverted completely." This is exactly what happened before he injured those trainers in Kentucky. Dr. Whitman was already examining one of the injured handlers, whose arm hung at an unnatural angle. "Broken," he confirmed grimly. "What exactly did Carson do?" "He put a training halter on Thunderbolt and tried to force him to perform basic commands," Elizabeth explained, her voice tight with anger. "When Thunderbolt resisted, Carson used the whip." It was as if all the progress from today vanished instantly. Mia watched the magnificent animal she'd connected with so deeply just an hour before, now transformed into a creature of pure rage and terror. His eyes were wild, his movements erratic and defensive. She could feel his confusion and betrayal, even from a distance. "I need to go in there," she said. Her father's journal still clutched to her chest. "We absolutely not," Elizabeth replied sharply. "He's dangerous now. Even your connection won't—" "It will," Mia interrupted with a certainty she didn't fully understand. "He's not angry. He's scared and confused. He trusted me. And then as soon as I left, someone hurt him. I need to show him not everyone will betray that trust." Dr. Whitman looked up from tending the injured handler. "Mia, your father would never want you to put yourself at risk like this." She held up the journal. "Actually, I think this is exactly what he prepared me for." Her fingers touched the horsehair bracelet on her wrist. "He believed in this gift enough to document it, to try to understand it scientifically. I owe it to him to at least try." Before anyone could stop her, Mia slipped through the fence rails and into the arena. Carson spotted her immediately. "Get out of here!" he shouted, his voice cracking with stress. "He's completely lost it." Mia ignored him, focusing entirely on Thunderbolt. The stallion had noticed her presence and paused his rampage, ears pricked forward in recognition, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. There was a moment of hesitation in his stance, a flicker of the connection they'd shared earlier. "That's it," she said softly, taking a slow step forward. "Remember me. Remember us." Thunderbolt snorted, pawing at the ground. The training halter Carson had forced on him was tight and restrictive, the lead rope trailing in the dirt where the trainer had dropped it in his escape. "Easy, boy," Mia continued, moving forward with measured steps. "I know you're confused. I know someone hurt you. But I'm here now." From the sidelines, Elizabeth and Dr. Whitman watched in tense silence. Several other staff members had gathered, their expressions a mixture of fear and fascination. "She moves exactly like Jack," Dr. Whitman murmured. "The same rhythm, the same subtle body language." Carson, seeing Mia approaching the horse, made a critical error in judgment. He raised the whip again, thinking to protect her. "Stay back. I'll distract him." The sudden movement and the crack of the whip sent Thunderbolt into another frenzy. He reared up, his massive hooves pawing the air just feet from where Mia stood. "Drop the whip," she commanded Carson, not taking her eyes off Thunderbolt. "Now!" Whether from the authority in her voice or simple fear, Carson complied, the whip falling to the arena floor. In that moment of stillness, Mia did something that made the onlookers gasp. She sat down cross-legged in the dirt, directly in Thunderbolt's path, making herself completely vulnerable. "What is she doing?" Elizabeth whispered, horrified. "Something Jack used to do," Dr. Whitman replied, making himself small, non-threatening. Taking away any perceived challenge. Thunderbolt's front hooves returned to earth as he stared at the small, seated figure before him. His breathing was still rapid, his body tense with residual fear and anger, but his attention was fully captured by Mia's unexpected action. "I trust you," she said simply, looking up at the powerful animal that could end her life with one misstep. "And I'm not afraid of you, and I won't hurt you." Slowly, she placed her father's journal on the ground beside her and extended her empty hands, palms up. "No whips, no ropes, just me." The stallion approached cautiously, his steps deliberate. When he reached Mia, he lowered his head until his muzzle was inches from her face. Everyone watching held their breath, expecting disaster. Instead, Thunderbolt gently pressed his forehead against Mia's, releasing a deep sigh that seemed to expel all his previous rage. She reached up and began untying the restrictive halter, freeing him from its confines. "That's better, isn't it?" she whispered. "No more restraints." With the halter removed, Thunderbolt sank to his knees beside her, mirroring Midnight Storm's earlier gesture of trust and submission. Mia leaned against his powerful shoulder, her hands stroking his neck in a rhythmic pattern. A stunned silence fell over the arena, broken only when Elizabeth finally spoke. "Carson, you're fired. Pack your things and be off the property within the hour." The trainer's face flushed with anger. "You're choosing this amateur over years of professional training, because of some parlor trick." "No," Elizabeth replied coldly. "I'm choosing decades of evidence that the Reynolds gift is real over your dangerous ego and incompetence. Now get out of my sight." As Carson stormed off, Dr. Whitman approached the fence cautiously. "Mia, are you all right?" She nodded, still leaning against Thunderbolt's solid presence. "We both are now." Looking up at the gathering of astonished staff members, she added, "He needs space and respect." That's all he ever needed. Elizabeth entered the arena slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile peace. When she reached Mia, her customary composure had returned, but there was something new in her expression, something like reverence. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I was so focused on what you could do for Thunderbolt that I didn't consider what coming here would mean for you." Opening old wounds, discovering painful truths. Mia picked up her father's journal, clutching it like a lifeline. "I needed to know, all of it," Elizabeth nodded. "And now that you do, what will you do with this gift of yours?" It was a question Mia hadn't had time to consider, but as she sat there with Thunderbolt's solid warmth against her, her father's words echoing in her mind, she felt the first stirrings of an answer taking shape. "Something my father would be proud of," she said finally. "Something that honors what he started." Elizabeth's eyes lit with an idea. "I may have a proposition for you then." 1 month later, Mia stood at the newly installed wooden sign beside the renovated stone cottage, the Jack Reynolds Center for Equine Behavioral Research. Behind her, Thunderbolt grazed peacefully in a small paddock, no halter or restraints in sight. Nearby, Midnight Storm dozed in the warm afternoon sun, his distinguished silver-flecked muzzle occasionally twitching in some hoarse dream. "Your father would be so proud," Dr. Whitman said, approaching with a stack of research papers. "He always believed this work needed scientific validation." Mia smiled, running her fingers over the engraved image of her father on the sign. "I still can't believe Elizabeth donated the land and funding." "Elizabeth Harrington always settles her debts," came a voice behind them. The elegant owner of Harrington Estates approached, her riding boots leaving precise imprints in the soft earth. "Though I'm not sure 20 acres and a research grant can ever fully repay what the Harrington family owes yours." Over the past month, Elizabeth's proposition had evolved into something far beyond Mia's initial expectations. Not just a job working with troubled horses, but a fully funded research center dedicated to studying the neurological and physiological aspects of human equine communication. Mia would work alongside Dr. Whitman, documenting her interactions with difficult horses, while specialists monitored brainwave patterns, hormone levels, and other measurable responses. "I accessed my trust fund yesterday," Mia said. "I've enrolled in the veterinary program at Arizona State for the fall semester, part-time, so I can continue the research here." "Perfect," Elizabeth nodded with approval. "Your father always said education and instinct needed to work together." "He'd be pleased." A car approached along the winding driveway, and Mia recognized her grandmother's old sedan. Her heart quickened slightly. These visits still carried a certain tension, though they were making progress. Margaret Reynolds emerged from the vehicle slowly, leaning on her cane. At Mia's insistence, she had finally agreed to see a specialist about her Parkinson's, paid for by the long-hidden trust fund. The new medication regimen had already improved her mobility noticeably. "She's here for the official opening?" Elizabeth asked, surprise evident in her voice. Mia nodded. It wasn't easy convincing her. "But I think Dad's journal helped her understand this is where I belong." The past month had been challenging for both Mia and her grandmother. The revelation of the hidden trust fund and Margaret's deliberate efforts to keep Mia from her inheritance had led to painful confrontations. But beneath Margaret's fears and deceptions, Mia had found a deep, protective love that couldn't be denied. "Grandma," Mia called, walking over to assist her. "You're just in time. We're about to cut the ribbon." Margaret surveyed the small gathering. Dr. Whitman, Elizabeth, and several Harrington Estate staff members who had worked with Jack years ago. Her expression remained guarded until her eyes fell on the sign with her son's name and image. "It's a good likeness," she admitted softly. "He always had that half smile, like he knew something the rest of us didn't." Mia took her grandmother's hand. "Oh, I want to show you something before the ceremony." She led Margaret to the paddock, where Thunderbolt and Midnight Storm now stood side by side, watching their approach with intelligent interest. Margaret stiffened, but didn't pull away. "These are the grandsons and son of the horse that killed your father," she said, her voice tight. "Now how can you stand being near them?" "Because they're also the horses that helped me find him again," Mia replied gently. "Look at them, Grandma, Really look. Do you see danger, or do you see consciousness, awareness, the same thing Dad saw? Margaret studied the two stallions, who gazed back at her with calm curiosity. After a long moment, she sighed. I see Jack in them. The way they're looking at you. It's how he looked at every creature that crossed his path, like he could see into their souls. That's the gift, Mia said simply. It's not a curse that got Dad killed. It's a blessing that made his life meaningful. She squeezed her grandmother's hand, and now it's making mine meaningful too. As if understanding the significance of the moment, Midnight Storm approached the fence, extending his elegant head toward Margaret. The older woman hesitated, then slowly raised her hand. The stallion gently touched his muzzle to her palm. Hello again, old friend, Margaret whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. It's been a long time. You knew Storm? Mia asked, surprised. Margaret nodded. I wasn't always afraid of horses. Before the accident, I used to bring you here while Jack worked. Storm was just a gangly yearling then. A tear slipped down her cheek. Fear takes so much from us, doesn't it? Moments later, they gathered for the small ribbon-cutting ceremony. Dr. Whitman said a few words about Jack's vision and legacy, and Elizabeth spoke briefly about the center's research goals. When it came time to cut the ribbon, Mia handed the scissors to her grandmother. We do this together, she said. For Dad. As the ribbon fell, symbolizing the official opening of the center, Mia felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. Balancing school, research, and caring for her grandmother would require all her determination. But for the first time in her life, she felt connected to something larger than herself, something that stretched back through her father and forward into a future full of possibility. That evening, as sunset painted the Arizona desert in hues of gold and crimson, Mia sat alone in her father's restored office, her journal open beside his. In her entry for the day, she wrote, "Today, I finally understood what you meant, Dad. The gift isn't just about horses, or even about that mysterious connection we share with animals. It's about bridges between past and present, between species, between what we can explain and what we can only feel. I'll spend my life exploring those bridges, just as you did. And somehow, I know you're watching, smiling that half smile that says you knew all along this day would come." Outside, Thunderbolt nickered softly as if in agreement. The sound carried on the desert breeze, not an ending, but a beginning.